Well, this particular winter here at Red Poppy Ranch represents the 6th winter that we've been living completely off-grid on the side of a mountain at nearly 6,000 feet in elevation. And when you live at this elevation in the mountains in Idaho, the snows can show up just about any month of the year. And over the years, we've had to figure out the best way to manage the heavy snows and the best equipment to use to keep our life moving forward when the heavy snows show up. So I picked up this Bobcat 853H 3 winters back. I've had it for, I think it was fall of the bad winter that we had 2 years ago. Right before that winter, thank goodness I got this machine. And I ended up picking up a snowblower shortly after that. When I'm doing cleanup after a heavy snowstorm, I usually start with my bucket and I clean up around the tight spots, specifically around the chickens and the deer and the places that might need a little detail work. But when it comes to really pushing snow, I need my 4-way snowplow blade. After using tractors and plow trucks to move snow around, I finally figured out that I needed a skid steer. I put a heater in this thing a couple of, shortly after I got it, I believe. And it takes a while with this little naturally aspirated diesel. It takes a while to get warmed up and to get this cab warm. So there's been many a time I've been wrapped up in blankets and bibs just trying to get the snow moved. But I'm not out in the elements. I'm not out in the cold. And when I had a tractor or when I had other stuff like that, I found myself out in the cold more. But to me, the only place to go from here would be to replace this skid steer with a newer skid steer. The difference between using a bucket on the skid steer and using this 4-way snowplow simply comes down to the quantity of snow that can be moved and how long it takes to move that snow. With the 4-way blade and this skid steer, I can move some serious snow. I first picked up my 1992 Bobcat 853H skid steer 2 years ago, right before the worst winter I've ever been a part of in my entire life. Which isn't saying a whole lot because I'm from Arizona, but let's just say 2 years ago, that winter, had I not had this skid steer, and I was going through plow trucks every year because this 3 miles of unmaintained county road, one of us is always going to town. Cedar's always taking the kids somewhere, and so the road has to be manageable. I have found that with the skid steer bucket and the 4-way snowplow blade, that having the skid steer snowblower was the icing on the cake. But really, most of the work is done using the 4-way snowplow blade. Because the skid steer is all-wheel drive and because I have the tires chained up, there aren't too many places that this 6,500-pound skid steer can't get to. I don't want to jinx myself, but even in the most extreme of conditions, I've never even come close to getting this little skid steer stuck. It's real simple. Just because it snows doesn't mean we can take a break from all of our responsibilities, whether it's animals or simply getting our kids to the school. But when it comes to really moving snow, and we live at 5,700, our house right here is at 5,700 feet in elevation, but our property goes all the way up to 6,700 feet in elevation, I believe. I could push snow with this skid steer with chains on the tires. I could push snow with this skid steer in ways that I could never do it with the plow truck. So typically, if the snowstorm will let me, as soon as the storm blows out, I jump in the skid steer and I start the process of trying to get our life back to normal, or as close as it can get when you live completely off-grid, again, on the side of a mountain at nearly 6,000 feet in elevation. Because we live on the side of a mountain, we also have trails that go all over our property, and I try to keep these trails open as best as I can all winter long, and clearly this skid steer can handle this job too. After spending 37 years in the state of Arizona, clearly I didn't have a reason to have anything that could move around snow, even after living for 7 years in a little town in the White Mountains of Arizona called Snowflake. There was one night we knew there was an exceptional snowstorm coming in, and we woke up the next morning to nearly 3 feet of snow. And because that town was not accustomed to that kind of snow, the town was shut down. And in that moment, I realized as a husband and a father that if I'm going to live in cold country, I should be more prepared. And so I had all the equipment to handle, the 300 plus inches of snow. I still don't even know for sure how much snow we got that particular winter. At the time, I guess the plow trucks that I could afford, I was buying $1,500 plow trucks, and that's probably part of it. But no matter what I had, I would try to upgrade every year. It was wearing them out. And at some point when I got the skid steer and I started, the very first thing I did was I used the bucket. So almost as important as my wood stove would be my skid steer and my plow blade. All right, I got the skid steer up here on the landing where the new deer pin starts. This is the switchback. This is the trail that I started on last year, and this runs up the edge of the deer pin. And I got the skid steer up here. I didn't even think I would be able to get it up here. If I can get this opened up enough, I'm going to get the excavator up here and finish cutting this trail in. I think I'm going to have time this winter to do that, but that means I need to kind of do the best I can to keep the trail open. And the truth is, the little skid steer can push that snow out of the way way faster than the excavator can. Well, now that I got the trail opened up to the landing, it looks like I'm going to have to fire up the excavator and see if I can finish up this trail that I started working on last winter. The bottom line is, if you've got some snow to move, the skid steer is the tool for the job. Anyway, I love this machine. Like I said, I really feel like I have some weird relationship with this piece of equipment. And this skid steer has never failed me. I actually feel like I have some sort of a bond with this skid steer after going through what we went through that really bad winter. This thing just never let me down. It was 17 below zero yesterday, and this thing will fire up no matter what. I feel like the old naturally aspirated diesels will fire up on the days when some of the turboed stuff likes to struggle a little bit. I start the skid steer up and let it warm up for a good 20-30 minutes and get all the fluids as warm as it can. And it sometimes takes a good hour before the heater is warm enough to to get me comfortable in here. And there's probably some things I could do. I could probably, instead of using a or along with this heater, what I probably should do is get a little 12-volt heater to go in here too, and that keep my toes from getting so cold. But it got to where we just didn't know where the snow was going to go, and that's when the snowblower, you know, that's when I could see that the using the snowblower was a much better way to do it. So at Red Poppy Ranch, this is how we manage the snow, and like I said, this is by far the best way that I have found of keeping the snow under control.